In today's video, we are going to try and understand the poem For the Union Dead by Robert Lowell. Robert Lowell is a twice Pulitzer Prize-winning writer whose works became prominent after the World Wars. He is a confessional poet in the legacy of Sylvia Plath, Anne Sexton, etc. For the Union Dead was delivered at the Boston Arts Festival in 1960s. The Latin epigraph of this phenomenal poem translates to, "They gave up all to serve the Republic." This phrase itself is the essence of the poem. The poem is a dedication to the Union soldiers who died in the Civil War. So, the poem For the Union Dead, which was published in 1960, can be considered a historical poem because it is about the soldiers of the American Civil War. The poem talks about noble self-sacrifice and presents the Civil War hero, Colonel Robert Shaw and his regiment. Shaw was a white American and his soldiers were black troops. Colonel Robert Shaw here symbolizes Union idealism, and he is a kind of universal figure. You can check out my blog for the complete transcript of this video. The link will be in the description box below. So let's now look at the poem. For the Union Dead by Robert Lowell. The old South Boston Aquarium stands in a Sahara of snow now. Its broken windows are boarded. The bronze weather-vane cord has lost half its scales. The airy tanks are dry. The poem begins with a childhood memory of the poet about the South Boston Aquarium. Lowell paints a picture of desolation using the opposing places Boston and Sahara. The usage Sahara of snow is an oxymoron. The aquarium is totally shut down now and its windows are broken. We get an intricate detail of the broken aquarium here. The weather-vane cord, which is an instrument used to show direction, has lost half its scales and the tanks are dry and there is no water. Once my nose crawled like a snail on the grass. My hand tingled to burst the bubbles drifting from the noses of the cowed, compliant fish. There is again a nostalgic reminiscing of the aquarium. When the poet was a child, he used to observe the fish in the aquarium touching his nose to the glass like a snail. He always wanted to pop the bubbles which came out of the mouth of the frightened fish. Like this, the poet slips in and out of his memories. My hand draws back. I often sigh still for the dark, downward and vegetative kingdom of the fish and reptile. One morning last March, I pressed against a new barbed and galvanized fence on the Boston Common. Behind their cage, yellow dinosaur steam shovels were grunting as they cropped up tons of mush and grass to gauge their underworld garage. As the speaker's hand draws back, he is brought back to the present. Even today he daydreams of the time when he used to visit the aquarium as a child, and he longs for that peaceful atmosphere. He sighs still as he sees this vegetative kingdom of fish and reptiles. It still gives him goosebumps and nostalgia. As a child, it frightened him sometimes, but as an adult, now there are more sinister things to be scared of. The next lines show that the memories about the aquarium was the foregrounding of a more serious event. The poem here takes a sudden shift from nostalgia to a grave subject. The speaker now talks about a March morning when he pressed himself against the barbed and galvanized fences in the Boston Commons. It is less prettier than the aquarium of the past. Through these fences, he watches the construction happening as yellow-colored giant JCB-like machines digging up earth and grass to make way for an underground garage. The machinery seemed more menacing with its grunting noises. Parking spaces luxuriate like civic sandpiles in the heart of Boston. A girdle of orange, Puritan pumpkin-colored girders braces the tingling State House, shaking over the excavations as it faces Colonel Shaw and his bell-cheeked Negro infantry on St. Gordon's shaking Civil War relief, propped by a plank splint against the garage's earthquake. These parking spaces have now made huge piles of sand chilling in the heart of Boston. This showcases the luxury of the life of people in Boston. The State House is given support with braces from the tingling of these construction works, but the memorial of Colonel Shaw and his bell-cheeked Negro infantry, made by the Irish-Mexican sculptor Saint Gaudens, is shaking in the earthquake caused by these constructions. There is only a propped-up plank to separate it from this crazy construction. 2 months after marching through Boston, half the regiment was dead. At the dedication, William James could almost hear the bronze Negroes breathe. Their monument sticks like a fishbone in the city's throat. Its colonel is as lean as a compass needle. Half the regiment died in the war. These were not just bronze statues, they represented noble self-sacrifice. During the dedication ceremony of these statues, the poet William James could almost hear the bronze Negroes breathe. The statues were so full of life because of what it represented. But the city has now lost all the values and the statue is ignored. Their monument is now like a fishbone in the city's throat, something useless and irritating which is to be removed. The colonel's figure is so ignored and not maintained that it is so lean as a compass needle. He has an angry wren-like vigilance, a greyhound's gentle tautness. He seems to wince at pleasure and suffocate for privacy. He is out of bounds now. He rejoices in man's lovely, peculiar power to choose life and die. When he leads his black soldiers to death, he cannot bend his back. Now there is a detailing of the statue of the colonel. He looked tense, but is gentle. He does not want any pleasure, but looks for some privacy which is invaded by the construction. Now that modernism has overtook, the colonel and his sacrifice is long forgotten. His statue is completely ignored and cannot seem to find peace in the modern construction area. When you look at him, you can see he is boundless. He is a universal symbol. He rejoices in man's peculiar power to choose life to die. He never bent his back when he was leading his troop. He was a powerful commanding chief. But now he seems to have lost all the glory. On 1,000 small-town New England greens, the old white churches hold their air of sparse, sincere rebellion. Frayed flags quilt the graveyards of the grand army of the Republic. The stone statues of the abstract Union soldier grow slimmer and younger each year, wasp-waisted, they doze over muskets and muse through their sideburns. There are a number of churches, but all of them lack the courage to revolt. They hold the air of patriotism, which is not enough. Flags are now used to cover the graveyards. No sense of patriotism is attached to it. The stone statues grow slimmer every year. Likewise, the sacrifice of Colonel and his regiment is fading from the memories of Americans. As years pass by, people are not being able to recognize the values of the statue. So, for every new generation, the statue is very new. When we look at it from another perspective, it could be interpreted as the Colonel is taking rebirth in the mind of each generation of Americans because of his noble deed. Shaw's father wanted no monument except the ditch where his son's body was thrown and lost with his niggers. The ditch is nearer. There are no statues for the last war here. On Boylston Street, a commercial photograph shows Hiroshima boiling. Over a mouseless safe, the rock of ages that survived the blast, space is nearer. When I crouch to my television set, the drained faces of Negro children rise like balloons. When Colonel Shaw died, his father did not want a monument. He only asked for the ditch in which the bodies were thrown. The ditch is still near. The statues could get completely destroyed as if falling into a ditch because of the ignorance. It could also be a reference to Second World War, where Hiroshima and Nagasaki happened. There is just a photograph of the atomic bombings in Hiroshima. No one knows the names or identity of people who fought and lost their lives in the world wars. The poet continues to say that if wars like this continue, space is near. That means after everything is done, there will be nothing left for anybody because it will be a meaningless void. The poet then criticizes media about how it monetizes and misuses its content. But he also participates in this exploitation because he becomes part of the modern world as he also watches television. The drained faces of Negro schoolchildren is a reference to the imagery of the fish in the aquarium. But unlike the fish, they are not compliant. Colonel Shaw is riding on his bubble. He waits for the blessed break. The aquarium is gone. Everywhere, giant fin cars nose forward like fish. A savage servility slides by on grease. Colonel Shaw is now waiting for the blessed break, maybe a complete dilapidation so that he can finally get peace. Now there is no aquarium and childhood memories. There are only giant finned cars which represent modernism. Everybody is in their busy life with no time to reflect on the past. Everything is fast moving and mechanical. No one has time to reflect on the values of the past. So that's all about For the Union Dead. You can visit the blog in the description box below. There will be a link. So thank you for watching.